All right, everybody. Good morning and welcome back to the KSR YouTube channel. Seemed like a lot of you guys were kind of interested in the Corvette project. So we're going to show you a little more of the Corvette project for Grant and Chuck. Starting to look a little more like a Corvette again. And we've gotten the roof fit, or Drew's gotten the roof and the rear hatch fit to the thing. See, we made some mounts that go between here. You can't quite see them up in there, but made some mounts that screw down to the body so that all we've got to do is take these screws out and then the back hatch will be able to come off. Right now the roof section and the rear hatch are bolted together, and you can see we set it with just a little bit of a lip so that when the Lexan goes on, it's perfectly flush across it. That's what we want the air to do. So now we're going to start fitting the main hoop in this thing, slam up against the roof. The actual seat for the car is supposed to be coming in today. They've ordered a full containment seat. The other seat we had in it for a mock-up, similar, but didn't have the head halo support. And before we finalize the main hoop, we're going to make sure that it still clears around that. But let's jump into this thing. See you guys on the other side of the intro. All right, well, while you're here on the channel, please subscribe, click the notification bell so that you see when we release a video. According to YouTube statistics, not a lot of you are doing that, but that's probably the same across a ton of channels. But if you really want to watch us, click that notification bell. And if you want some KSR merch, winwithksr.com, hats, stickers, hoodies, t-shirts, lanyards, all kinds of other little silly stuff. But C5 Corvette, near max effort road race build, let's call it that. Oh, we're taking doors off.
Weight reduction.
Weight reduction? Yeah, there's not much left of the doors.
There's a little bit left in there.
Yep.
Can you cut it? I can cut it. I love
we're probably going to need to be cutting it because the door bars are going to be coming out through here because we're trying to get the door bars out as far from the driver as possible. So they'll land on that pad right there, or the A-pillar bar will land on that pad. And they're going to come off of that bar. So when they go backwards, they'll go down kind of out into the door so that the driver, which Grant and Chuck actually asked me to maybe come drive with them at some events. So we won't be banging our elbows on roll cage. Banging elbows on roll cages really sucks. If you don't know that, Soccer Mom kind of has that problem. So we're always kind of like scrunched into Soccer Mom when we're trying to drive it. But that's a drag race car, so we don't really need a lot of movement because you're hopefully just going straight in a drag race car. Anytime you've got to do a lot of steering in a drag race car, you might just be having a bad day. But probably going to jump into a time lapse here. I'll talk you over what we're doing and walk you through it in our little talk over time lapse segment. But yeah, let's get into this thing and start. Oh, Drew's cutting on the doors. All right, let's get to work. All right, like with most projects that, at least for the first time doing one, say for us, this is our first time doing this serious of a roll cage inside of a C5 Corvette with a carbon Kevlar roof. There's a lot of back and forth and mocking up and making sure you don't cut something too short. Right here, we're actually notching the roof and rear hatch where they come together to clear the main hoop. Going to do a little bit more mocking up here. Roof on, roof off, sliding the main hoop around a little bit, shortening the main hoop. Lots of mocking up to make sure that, you know, we don't take too much off, because it's, once you take too much material off, you can't add it back on and the roll cage still be legal. So we actually tack the main hoop in right there, kind of fit the roof, or double check the roof that it still fits. You can see where we've notched the back firewall out so that the roll cage lands directly on the factory frame inside of the Corvette. And that's the best way to do these. And there's other cage kits out there that land the kit farther forward, but Grant and Chuck are both really tall, so we need the cage to be as far back as we can, but still be high enough to clear their heads once they are fully bolted down and strapped into the car. So now while we're waiting for Grant to bring the seat down, Drew's chopping out the rear drop section in the trunk floor. We're doing that because, well, all that extra material there is extra weight, and we needed access to the rear frame rails anyway to land the cage on, as well as Grant and Chuck are going to be working on some kind of rear diffuser to channel the air kind of up through the back of the car. There's going to be exhaust in this section. So a lot of little things are going to happen underneath this hole, and we just didn't need that piece there so that we can access the different parts of the frame, which you can kind of see some extra cutting right there to where Drew is accessing the factory rear subframe bolts where they go through the frame. We're going to talk about that more in just a second. Alrighty. Alright, well, now that the sun is very much reflecting off the other building and I can barely see the camera, we've got a little more to show you here in real time. So this is what Drew is working on right now. See, we cut out all of that right there, which Grant and Chuck are going to be working on a diffuser that helps draw the air upwards as it exits under the car. And the idea there is a rear diffuser can actually draw the car down, and it helps increase velocity of the air going underneath the car, which helps suck it down to the ground harder, especially when you do some other tricks. That's very beneficial on cars that have flat bottoms, kind of like the Corvette does. Viper is the same way. Any of your new cars, even if you look at some of the NASCAR cars that have flipped, they are completely flat bottom now because they are trying to rely on the airflow under the car rather than the air that goes over the car for downforce, which it seems to be working out pretty good. Some of the NASCAR races I've seen the highlights of have been, looks like it's been some pretty good racing. But anyways, we're talking about road race cars, not NASCAR. Rabbit trail. So what we've got going on here is this is the mount for the rear subframe, or at least this bolt goes all the way down through there and is the mount for the subframe. So why not tie our roll cage right to that? So this is going to be made out of steel, and then this will go on top of that steel plate so we can still access the bolt with a socket through the hole. But then now we have this nice corner to land the roll cage in. And the idea with tying the frame together and stiffening the frame up there, you know, we don't want to talk about crashing, but if the car does get crashed in the back, the goal is to try and support the frame where the suspension attaches so that you cut off the bent stuff, weld some new stuff on, and you go racing again. It's kind of like the drift guys. You know, they plan sections in the car that will crush. If you guys have watched Taylor Ray's video lately with his Corvette that he's building, they're doing something a little more serious right from the get-go when it comes to like a bash bar setup. We're not going to be doing that on this thing, at least until it gets crashed, which hopefully will be never. But we at least will have the option to do that, and you know, we'll be able to work to a known good part of the roll cage and the frame to then build back to hold the rear bumper up again. Going to be doing something kind of similar in the front with one of the rear suspension points. Got to double check some rules on bars going through the firewall, but I think that's what we're going to do. Anyways, Drew is marching along. Should have these welded in for too much longer. The seat is supposed to be here today. I think it's being delivered to Grant's house, and it's actually at his house. He's got some work to do, and then he's going to be bringing it over for us to try in the car and see if our main hoop is going to work out. I may actually bend up a new main hoop. Haven't decided 100% yet. Depends on where the seat sides actually are in relation to our main hoop that we've got bent up. So I'm gonna get back to working. Drew's gonna get back to working. You should see some steel pieces being welded in here shortly. Like that. About to have some steel pieces worth welding in?
Yep.
Cool. Well, so we'll show you guys all that here in just a second. Probably in a time lapse. Yeah, then we'll be back in another little bit. All right, so now Drew's gonna start welding all those plates in, and the factory welds around the mounts for the subframe, they're kind of dirty, not gonna lie. It's very quickly, looks like it was MIG welded, so the welds aren't very smooth. So we end up needing to go in, clean out a bunch of kind of paint and stuff out of the nooks and crannies so that we can weld the plate not only around the perimeter, but also around the hole where the subframe goes through. So then once that is all welded, the little short tubes that are there in the pictures are going to get welded above that hole so that we have the access to the bolt like I talked about a minute ago. So ended up having to close the door because it was a little bit windy this day. So the shielding gas kept getting blown away. So we pulled the door down to cut down on the wind where Drew was welding. And I will tell you guys, like, the foundation that you lay down for your roll cage is one of the most time-consuming parts of building that roll cage. You don't want to land your roll cage on poor quality metal. You don't want to land it on a floor. You want to try and land it on strong points of your chassis so that, you know, if the worst happens, your roll cage is there to save you. If the car gets to flipping and spinning, you don't want it to get upside down and the cage just punch right through the floor. There's pictures of that floating around on the internet. As you might imagine, it's not very good for the driver. So you want to make sure that you land on good strong points of the chassis, and you also want to make sure that you weld 100% around your mounting plates. Typically, most rule makers have a minimum square inch of mounting plate that you have to weld to your chassis. It's the same for full frame cars and for unibody style cars, so make sure you pay attention to those rules, because if your car fails here, the whole cage has to be cut out. All right, well, we are back on the car just a couple days later, and you can see where we've ended up with a main hoop. It's pretty much touching the roof all the way across the top. And there was kind of a compromise on the width, because the wider we made it go out, it would have to be lower. So we did it about as wide as we could do it and still get the A-pillar bars around the seat. You can see on this side I've actually started working on where the roof bar is going to fit. So it comes out here and it's going to tie in as high on the cage as we can get it. Let's see where we ended up with the diagonal. And I held head and TIG welded that. It's most likely going to come out of the car once we're all said and done. But we did a recess bar there so that the seat can be tipped back further at some point. But I'm going to walk you through at least my first attempt at this A-pillar bar. And it's, not going to lie, it's a bit challenging. Because there's 3 bends in it. There's a bend right in here. And then it comes in and tucks. The idea is it will tuck under here, bend out, stay close to the A-pillar, and then come down and land on the plate. Well, there's a different rotation for each bend. I have some tools that I can use to kind of mock those up. Just let me show you that. These are called the cage gauge. Actually, a friend of mine that races in the Champ Car Endurance Series came up with these a few years ago. And I use them for bars that I cannot or do not design in CAD. This bar I know it can be designed in CAD. I'm just not that great with CAD. So you can see what it does is it actually simulates the bends so that we can figure out exactly where you kind of mock it up with pieces of PVC pipe, because obviously those are a whole lot cheaper than cutting and bending up tube. And then the different planes that the aluminum pieces are from each other, that basically gives you the amount you have to rotate it. So we get that mocked up there. Yeah, that's about where that one was ending up. Now, I only have 2 of these things. Kind of wish I had 3 for this project. But you can see I made some marks kind of up on the roof up here for where the different things end up. So I'm going to take a stab at the bar I've designed, see if it fits. I'm going to do it in steel. And if it doesn't, we'll look at the design and where it needs to change. I know we've got a lot of short bars coming, like vertical supports in the doors, some gussets in the roof, gussets to other things. So if I end up scrapping the bent area of the bars, it's not a huge deal. Obviously we don't want to take too many shots at it, but I'm okay with the custom cages that we're doing. I don't mind, you know, missing once and then making revisions and getting it spot on perfect the second time. It's actually the second main hoop we did for the car. I had done another one where the bend here kind of angled this back a little bit. I didn't like the way that looked, both from a strength perspective. I didn't want to get into any trouble with any rules maker about the main hoop being kind of in 2 planes. I've seen it done in some cars, but I didn't want to have to answer to a tech official about it. So let me get started on bending this bar and we'll see if it fits. All right, so the last of the time lapses for this video, it's basically just me bending up this A-pillar bar. See, I roll the bender over. I've already cut the tube to the length that I've calculated that I need. I typically leave about 1 inch extra on each end just to make sure, because you never know when you might need that extra inch. Yeah, don't read into that comment too much. Anyways, I end up kind of double checking my math here, double checking the rotations, because like I said, if you get it wrong, you have to go back and remake that tube. I always try to get them first time, but sometimes you don't, and that's okay too. But if I can get it first time, that's just awesome. So kind of eyeballing this, making sure that I've got my rotation the way I had documented it in the car, taking some different measurements, verifying again, and finally pulling the trigger on this final bend. You can see I'm mocking it up with my 2 cage gauges, and I think I'm going to go ahead and buy another one of those things, because I think a third one would really come in handy. They do really help out for when you don't have a CAD program, which I do use a CAD program sometimes, but in this instance it made quicker work for me not to. So let's see how close we got it on the first shot. All right, well, by the looks of things, I got pretty lucky on the first bend. So you can see where the bar actually comes out a little bit, which we had planned. And right now it's unnotched where it is laying up against the other bar here. So you can kind of imagine this assembly tucking back and in just a little bit. So it'll actually take this peak right here and bring that back in probably 1/2 inch, which will be about perfect. And then good tight fit there. I might put just a little bit more bend in here to pull that back more in the center of the plate. But other than that, I mean, we are snug on the roof up here. And you know, there'll be a windshield, top of the windshield bar. Then there's going to be some kind of, I'm not sure if I'm going to do like a V yet, or because there's going to be lots and lots of, because this is a pretty long open spot here, so there'll be some kind of diagonal here that comes more straight down to the mounting point there to make like a triangle here, or we might even do it off the door bar. Kind of see once we get the door bars in it where all that's going to end up, but I'm really happy with that for the first shot. Pretty sure I'll be able to use that, like really sure I'll be able to use that once I notch it back there at the main hoop. And the cool thing is, because everything's so centered, I should just have to flip which way I rotate the bar when I'm bending it, and it should fit on the other side. That'll be real exciting if we do that. So yeah, I'm really excited with that. That's gonna wrap up this video because I gotta go home. Appreciate everybody watching and subscribing. Stay tuned for some more videos this week of well, that. Tell you what's going on with that. And also I've got another video coming where we were up at Finnegan's place with the death metal charger, plus all the other shop stuff. Yeah, we're busy. So thanks again to you guys for watching. I think we're almost at 270,000 subscribers. That number just doesn't seem like a real number to me. But thank you to every one of you that's watching, supporting the channel by buying merch, all that great stuff. And I do have another update coming on that thing up there, or at least the engine and transmission for it. So yeah, lots of stuff. Oh, and I bought a new car. Not a new car, new to me car. But I have a lot of history with this car. Stay tuned for that.